These testimonials are representative of my or our experiences, but the exact results and experience will be unique and individual to each person. The information provided herein is not medical advice and is not intended to substitute for the advice of your personal physician or other healthcare providers. Welcome to The Beautiful Bag. This is your host, Leanne Hayden, cancer survivor, and more importantly, ostomy lifer. Each and every week, I'm going to be bringing a special guest or some inspiration for you and a few little stories along the way so that you can learn what life is like for us to be living in an ostomy and why we all think it's a beautiful bag. So listen in and let's get started.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's The Beautiful Bag podcast episode. I am your host, Leanne Hayden, and I am here with Sara Levitt. I got to tell you guys, I was on Instagram. You know, I'm always talking about I'm on Instagram, right? I'm on Instagram, and all of a sudden, this girl just starts popping up and popping up and popping up in my feed. And I'm like, who is she? Where did she come from? Oh my gosh, we need her story. So she's here with us today. So Sara, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. It's so funny because like we were just talking about a minute ago before we hit the record button, all of a sudden you were there and all of a sudden you're popping up and all of a sudden your social media is growing and all of a sudden this is growing and everything else. But your story has been a longer one. It's been a while and
it's been quite some time.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, was hiding behind my ostomy and predominantly the negative stigma for, now we're 2024, so I can say 16 years, not 15 years. But yeah, so I was diagnosed with colitis at age 3. And then at age 11, I got even more sick. I started, your typical symptoms, diarrhea, bloody stool, not being able to eat, vomiting all the time, severe decrease of weight, and just like an exponential amount of pain in my stomach. At that point, my mom had brought me in, they had done a colonoscopy, and the colitis had basically grown into, spread into Crohn's disease and was affecting my entire digestive system. So I had, signs in my mouth, in my stomach, in my large intestine, my small intestine, and it spread to my rectum as well. So for the next 2 years, I was in and out of hospitals up until 2008. So in 2006, at age 11, that's when I started getting super, super sick. And then for the next 2 years, up until 2008, I was in and out of hospitals for consecutive periods of time, like 2 to 3 months at a time. I was fed by nose tube. I was fed by TPN. I was on sometimes up to 8 pills a day. I lived on prednisone for quite some time, and nothing was really working. It became a point where it was basically life or death. And May 2nd, 2008, I had my first emergency surgery. They gave me a colostomy, and at the time it was a temporary colostomy. So I kind of already always had in the back of my mind, okay, it's temporary. So I'm going to, make do with it. I'm going to learn how to live with it. I'm going to, work on my self-confidence and work on my self-love and, figure out how to, make this the best life I can for the meantime. But I kind of hid behind a negative stigma because I was so scared of, showing the world that I had this because it was so different. At this age, I was, age 13. It's, you're coming of age as a female, you're going through puberty, your peers are, developing, turning into young females. And, on top of having the moon phase from prednisone, being underweight, being, my growth was stunted. I was lack of developing. Now you throw in the ostomy and there's just so many things in the ballpark that you're just trying to navigate and learn how to live with and learn how to, love yourself. And you're constantly comparing yourself to like others and what beauty and femininity is deemed to be. And it's like I've said before, it's like what we see out there, what we see in publications, and what we see on social media, or even our peers, like if we're comparing ourselves to them, it's like if that's what beautiful is, if that's what is accepted by society, then like that's not me. So that kind of like buckled me down further into the negative stigma. I was just so scared for people to know that I had this. It was like the thought of people in my city knowing that I had an ostomy was the biggest fear. And kind of like thinking like, okay, well, it's not permanent, it's temporary. I don't necessarily need to share this to the world. Like it's going to disappear. So it was almost like contradictory in a way. And it was like almost like a crazy bad habit that I just became so good at hiding my ostomy. I learned to embrace it. I learned to work with it. To in terms of my direct circle and my social circle. So obviously my family, my friends at the time knew, but as like went through my young adult years and my coming of age, and I had to slowly start telling, or slowly felt the need to start telling, new friends, new partners in terms of relationships. That's what kind of helped, and were like little mini victories that got me more accepting and more closer and more at ease of talking about the ostomy, because it was something that I hid for so long. And for so many years, it was very hard to talk about it. It was like almost struggling to like find the words, because it's not something you talk about typically. It's like, okay, well, where do I start? And like, especially because the ostomy has to do with like a topic that we don't typically talk about like every day, which is bodily waste, basically poop. It's like on top of not talking about it, it's like, okay, how do I talk about this in a way that doesn't like offend people, or like make it seem like it's gross or anything like that, which like it's not even. um and just like all of these things in the equation, it just seemed like it was so much to deal with, and I was just so scared to share any information.
Well, you know what's crazy? Well, you had said you were 13 years old. Like you were
Yeah.
13 years old as a 13-year-old, whether you're male or female. You're right. It's your coming of age. It's you're going through
Mhm.
puberty. It's you're looking at what the standards say that you're supposed to look like out there, right? I mean, and that's just a bunch of crap, as we know, right? And
Yeah,
so you were going through that, and then you said you slow and but it was supposed to be temporary.
exactly. Yeah.
And so now you're 13 years old. When did you start opening up and starting to tell people? Like, how old were you? How many years did it take for you to be able to,
Yeah.
outside of your close friends and your family, how many years did it take for you to be able to start to open up about that?
So I think my first partner, and this is like, I've never spoken about this before, but I think my first partner that I had at age 15, I had told them. And towards the end of the relationship, I mean, we were 15. It was a very like relationship. Like it's just, we're just talking, having fun. And it towards the end of the relationship, he basically had made this like really silly threat that, I'm gonna tell the world that you have this. He was the first guy I think that I had told that wasn't a friend at the time, and it was somebody new. And I think this like buckles into the trauma and, the negative stigma and the scare, and, really put me deeper into that fear of telling more people, because it was one of my first experiences of telling, somebody completely new, especially like a partner in, like an intimate situation. Um, and being kind of like threatened seemed like, okay, well, if I could be threatened with this, then like it's a bad enough thing that like it could, destroy me, or like make me feel insignificant, or like belittle me. So um yeah, that situation definitely, like it was so traumatic. Even just thinking about it now, like I think I had like a severe panic anxiety attack. My sister got on the phone, like she knew very well who this person was. Like she spoke to him. He made sure like this is not something like you do. You're not talking about this. And yeah, I think that was like one of the first experiences ever that I had in terms of like a relationship. And then
How did you deal with that though? So he threatened you with it, then you felt the fear and the trauma of it and wanting to hide it. How did you deal with that? How did you cope with that? I mean, yes, you had your sister, which was fantastic.
yeah.
I have one of those sisters too. She happens to be my younger sister, but she'll take up for me for anything. She always has.
Yeah, yeah.
But how did you deal with that?
Um, it's crazy to say, but I feel like at that age, I felt so powerless and I lacked a lot of the resources, a lot of like the social community and support, like just a support system of ostomies. Like I had gone to an ostomy camp and I had, formed some friendships, but none of them that were close. And at that age too, it's like social media kind of wasn't really a thing. Like it was very hard to foster those relationships more and keep them close. So it's crazy to say, but I honestly feel like my coping mechanism was just like internalizing it all and just literally pretending like it had never happened. And I think like that was one of the biggest issues is like having never spoken about it, never actually dealing with what had happened, going over it, talking about it with somebody, having somebody say, like, no, like, that's crazy talk. Like, you are so much more than that. Like, being threatened is nothing about it. Like, you should not be scared. You should not be fearful. Like, yes, of course, I had that from my direct family and my sister at the time. But, hearing it from another ostomy and like ostomy communities and like other IBD like survivors and warriors, like I think it goes so much further when you talk about these situations with the actual direct community, because that it's coming from a place of like they can completely directly relate to you and it's not just like typical support. So it's crazy, but I feel like I honestly, like, my coping mechanism was just to completely feel like pretend that it had never happened, like move past it and like almost hope that it would never happen again. But like at that time I was like just so scared to tell anybody else. Um so like moving forward into like my young adult, age, reaching, my later teens and my early 20s, thinking back now at my other relationships that I've gone through and other situations where I've had to tell other partners, it like turned out to be sometimes it'd be like literally a 2-hour conversation up into the for me to get out the fact that like, hey, I have this, like I have an ostomy, because I was so scared. But as I grew older, obviously going through other life situations and other mini victories that we can like touch on afterwards. But I grew a little bit of a thicker skin. I obviously had the maturity aspect. Like I was starting to really, accept it with the ostomy within my life. And it was becoming a little bit, I was having more ease going into these discussions. But I think having this traumatic experience and having literally just like pushed it all the way down and never actually like dealing with it at hand, I definitely kind of like led with that situation going into like future conversations.
Okay. And we all learn in different ways, right? And like, and what
Yeah.
you already said, you were in that age of development anyways. Like that age from 13 to, gosh, I would say 18,
Yeah.
that really is those ages, that 5 years is a big deal. And you were dealing
It
with,
is. Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
dealing with a lot, but like you said, other relationships, you've had to trust it. It took time. It took time. It took you
Yeah.
time. It took you years before you
Yeah.
really were able to open up and trust again. When did your ostomy become permanent?
So after my first surgery, May 2nd, 2008, I did have 4 other surgeries after that, up until like my early young adult years. I would say like my early 20s was probably like my last surgery. Throughout those surgeries, they did like stoma revisions. They had turned the colostomy into an ileostomy, and then resulting in doing the protectomy and removing my rectum and making the ostomy permanent. The ostomy became permanent in my like early 20s. And at that point, I had spent so many years, dedicated to working on my self-love and, my rebuilding my confidence and being able to look at myself, in a beautiful light and learning how to work with the ostomy. And I had just lived so much life up until this point. I had had so many experiences, so many memories that, I was aware enough to be like, my ostomy literally is the only reason why I'm able to live life the way that I do and have all these beautiful moments. So it was it was not even a question when it came time for them telling me like your rectum has not improved. There is still significant signs of the disease. And it's time, like we need to remove it and we need to make the ostomy permanent. It was not even a question on my mind. I still knew that there was going to be work to be done, in terms of obviously my self-love and other experiences in the future. But in terms of like sacrificing everything that I've already worked on just to not have a bag, like that was, it was never going to be an option. So at that time I was like, yeah, this is what we're doing. I was definitely still scared. I still had fear, but I didn't doubt it at all.
So what did you do? Because again, you're young going through this, right? What
Yeah.
were those things? Because we do have a lot of people that are older that are going through and struggling. We have a lot of people that are younger that listen to this podcast that are going through and struggling. What were some of the things that you specifically did to help with your self-love, to help with your self-awareness and to bring that confidence into you? What were some of the things that you did
Yeah.
to make that happen?
So back in 2017, and I think these self-love experiments, I guess you could say, really started when I became like in my late teen. When you start wanting to be seen as, beautiful, sexy, admired, and um that's when I was like even struggling more so, and with the whole, fashion aspect and outfits and what am I supposed to wear, and your style is developing. So the first thing I had done back in 2017, I had discovered Jessica Grossman, who is the founder of Uncover Ostomy, and I really related to her content and to the photography she was doing. And I was like, you know what? Let's do a photo shoot for myself. Let's just do a personal photo shoot. The photos aren't going anywhere. Let's try to, see myself in a more like beautiful light, and let's see how that makes myself feel about the whole situation. I had done this photo shoot, and I had done it with one of my friends, and the photos came out, and like I love them. I looked at them, but I still felt like I wasn't the most powerful version of me yet. I wasn't really seeing what I wanted to see, and I felt like I needed to really just continue. And I had the intention afterwards when I got the images, and I was like, they're they're beautiful images. Like I feel beautiful, but there was still, my eyes were going towards the ostomy, and it's like I don't want to feel like I'm looking at an image and my eyes are going towards the ostomy. I want to look at the image for everything that I am. And I had like a little bit of an intention of maybe posting them on social media. I had even, was like, okay, let me just like write a caption. Let me try to, put my feelings into words, which was another amazing, like activity in terms of, talking about it. Because like I said, like if you don't actually talk about it and you don't verbalize it and you don't, put your thoughts out there, whether you journal, whether you just write in your notepad, that's it's it's another way of just disassociating from the entire thing. So I think that's another great exercise. So I had, challenged myself to, like, let's just write a caption and see like how I feel. And maybe this caption will help me, love the images even more. It still didn't bring me to the point where I wanted to. I still had so much fear of like, well, when I post these, like, what are people going to think about me? And that was always like the biggest fear. So I went about my life. I never posted them or anything. Other really mini victories that I think were super, super important was challenging myself to tell other friends and new friends as I went to college and as I went to university. And, if I had situations where we were sleeping, like I was sleeping over at a friend's house or I was going out, I I really felt like, okay, I don't want to always have to hide it. Like I'm hiding it in my public life, like in terms of like my social media and taking pictures and all of that, and hiding it in my private life too, in terms of like new friends that I meet and new people. But I could still, maybe be a bit strategic of who I pick and choose and, challenge myself to tell at least one or two new people and not tell anybody, because that's gonna further me like even deeper into it. So through college and university, I would tell, some new friends, and that helped me a lot. Again, the whole aspect of, talking to new people. And then in terms of the body image, it was back in 2019 that I went on a family vacation to Cuba. This was like a huge monumental moment and something that I definitely suggest to others. And I went on this vacation and I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pack nothing but bikinis. And I'm in a completely another country. I'm not gonna bump into anybody that I know. And I'm gonna really challenge myself to just feel comfortable in my own body, in my own skin. Um, I had a lot of cover-ups, but I did not have a single one piece. I had all two pieces and like low bottoms as well, like nothing high-waisted. Um, and I remember the first day I put on my bikini, and it's funny, I remember exactly what that bikini was. It was like an army fatigue bikini. So it's almost like I was like, I was like ready for combat. I was like, I can do this. Let's go. And I walked that beach, and of course, like I think a typical ostomy, sometimes you walk and you have like your hands, covered. Like you could be a bit embarrassed of what I call the ostomy bulge, and just like the bag being there. And of course, like I wasn't my full confident self yet, but I was super proud of myself for pushing my limits to that point. And I think that helped a lot. And a really beautiful experience happened. Actually, I saw a couple approaching me, and the first moment I was like so scared and so fearful. I was like, oh my God, they're gonna come up and ask me like what's on my stomach, what is that? And this was always my most like fearful question. I was like, I don't even know what I'm gonna say. And they came up to me, and it turned out that the husband had had a t-shirt on. He had had an ostomy. He was new to the ostomy community. He had never, walked the beach or with the ostomy showing. And I had explained my story, and I had told him, hey, this is like I've had this for quite some time, but it's actually my first time like walking with it. And this is one of, a moment that I've kind of like challenged myself in order to come further to accepting it and embracing like my entire life. And he proceeded to take his top off, and he walked the beach with me with his ostomy. And it was like a really grateful moment. That was kind of like a moment I realized like, wow, like this is like there's others out there that are just like me, and the impact that, embracing it has on others. And that's when I started like getting a little bit more deep into thinking of like, okay, like I really want to get to the point where I can, fully embrace it within my my close circle, my private life, but also like my social and my public life. Um, at that time, I was starting to take, my concentration and my Instagram a little bit more seriously. I was, my love for photography and picture taking and, fashion and lifestyle blogging was really picking up. So it's still a struggle. Like on my pictures, the ostomy was still hidden. It was either, my backside, or I was having a cover up on. But I was never posting with the ostomy. So I think at that point was when it really was like a big victory for me, and a big like moment of me thinking like, okay, like if I can do what I just did now, like let's keep on going, and like we will eventually get to the point that we want to be at, which is being able to not hide it completely. Um, so I think like to kind of like summarize that in terms of like other ostomates, battling with the same these same challenges of, being able to fully embrace it and accept it. I think just, you could talk about it, of course, with other ostomates. You could talk about it with your family and your friends. But I think, like journalizing it, like journaling, writing notes about it, like getting your thoughts out into words helps you become more intact and more close with like your actual emotions rather than just bottling them up inside, which is what I did. I think bottling them up inside, it's like you're never actually dealing with them, like you're thinking about them. But like when you talk about it, and even like through this entire experience, me talking about it, like of course, like being social about it now and everything, like it takes so much bravery, but like I'm of course like anybody on social media, like you open the doors to all types of comments and all types of messages. So you gotta have a thick skin. But even me right now, like despite where I'm at in my ostomy journey, like there's, I can still get a negative comment or two, but like being able to talk about it openly now and talk about with other like ostomies and verbalize my emotions have made me even stronger throughout this journey, even more so than when I first shared publicly. So 100%. I think writing it down and talking about it is so important, and just making like little like goals, like the bathing suit aspect, I think for both like males and females like is so important, because even with like swim shorts, the ostomy shows, so just like the man on the beach, you would wear a t-shirt. So if you don't feel comfortable, within like your direct city, go on like a mini road trip and just challenge yourself somewhere where like nobody. And just do these situations in order to get yourself out of the comfort zone, because the longer that you stay in it, and coming from somebody that was in it for literally like 15 years, it becomes very hard to get out of it. It almost like, for me, up until the point of like 2017, of me sharing, of me going walking on the beach like publicly the first time, I almost felt like just a bad habit that I had developed, and I had gotten like literally just so good at hiding my ostomy. And it just almost became like a lifestyle, like unintentionally.
And you affected someone's life. Like you challenging yourself in another country, you don't know anybody. You said, that's it, I'm going to wear this thing. I'm going to go walk. I'm going to walk the beach. You changed someone's life,
Yeah,
one person's life, which is
yeah,
huge. And I
yeah,
think, and you said it, it's like you guys walked the beach together, and that helped you. You know what I mean? It helped you say, you know what, I'm changing someone's lives. I'm making a difference. I'm going to start.
yeah,
Imagine if I opened up a little bit more. Imagine if now I start sharing
exactly.
a little bit more what I
Yeah.
can do. Because girl, what you're doing right now out here on social media, out here, you're changing some lives. You are absolutely
Thank you.
stunning and beautiful. I
Yeah.
know Jess Grossman, and she's gonna love knowing that she affected you. Have you told her this yet? You told her?
Yeah. So when I shared my story for the first time, I like on my birthday this year, September 26th, well, last year actually, I had like reached out to her and was like, hey, like I would love to have like your support on this. And she had replied back, and it was like one of the happiest moments ever. So yeah.
Yeah, she is fantastic. She is absolutely
Yeah.
wonderful. For her to, I mean, she came out in her bathing suit and she started out in magazines, and people, when I first got mine, people were sending me pictures of her too. Like, hey, look, she's out there. It was like the same exact time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when I got mine, because I've had mine since I got mine in 2016. So you've had
Okay.
it way longer than I have.
It's
But again, you're making
like
strides.
it, yeah, exactly. I think it's like it's so important to, connect with so many different type of ostomates online, and in our community, and there's so many different types of content out there. And someone like in the content industry, like it's so important for all the different types of content, the educational ones, the informational ones, the bike changes, the body images, the fashion. It's it's so important to see it all, and it's just so exciting now that I get to be a part of it, because uh I wasn't even like really searching like on socials, like even when socials like became a thing, like I wasn't really searching like ostomy, ileostomy, Crohn's disease. Like it was just a complete disassociation for me. So it's just so exciting now, like when I open my phone and I see a new comment or a new like or a new follower, and like I'll go and I'll find myself going down the rabbit hole like of social media and being like, oh my God, look at all these people, like follow. So it's like even that now, like it's such an advantage. It's like another huge aspect I think that I'll like heavily suggest to other ostomates is like, yes, connect with other ostomates like on social, like TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. It's not something that I had the ability to do back then at age 13. Like social media was not as prevalent as it is now. It was not really a thing. Um, and it's just such an amazing resource now to be able to, you know, like literally at your fingertips, connect and have so many resources and like firsthand experiences. And chances are like you will connect with somebody that's going through exactly what you're going through, that has exact same thoughts, exact same emotions, and you'll be able to, you know, relate to them and sympathize with them. And I think that's like just so beautiful, and that will further help others become more accepting and be able to embrace their ostomy even more so.
Yep. And you're so right with that. You're so right with that. Now you said it was December of this year, of last year, I mean, 2023.
For when I shared my story,
Yeah.
September, my birthday.
September. Okay, September. I was like, December, wait.
Almost close.
Almost. So September. So again,
Yeah.
you're brand new at sharing out on social since September.
Yeah.
What, so you said you wanted to do it. You said it's time. Let's see what happens. Let me just put this out there. Let's see what happens. And, you know, you asked for some support, which is very smart, right? It's very smart.
Yeah.
Hey, you come and support me within this. And you're changing lives. How do you feel now? What would you tell, before I even go there, what would you tell that 13-year-old girl?
Oh my God. I say this like, I think I say this like all the time in my stories and my captions. I'm like, I feel so repetitive, but like, I literally say all the time, like 13-year-old me is probably screaming at the top of her lungs, like whipping those nose tubes and those IV tubes, like in her hospital bed, screaming, dancing. I would have like, it's crazy. Like I would have never thought like me sharing my story would amount to be everything that it is now, and that like my biggest fear would be my greatest blessing. And like in a way, it was always my greatest blessing because the ostomy gave me my life back. But in a way, it was also like one of the most challenging things to have ever happened in my life because it completely changed my life at that point, or so I thought it would, in a negative way, but it was actually the most positive way. So it's crazy to think because I going through those years, like I said, as I became, you know, more aware of my ostomy and the impact and really wanting to get to the point of being able to like love myself and embrace it and, you know, get to the point where I'm at now. I never thought it would be like exactly where I'm at now and everything that's happened. It was just to me being able to, you know, post the picture and be like, hey, this is me. But um like since then it's crazy, like the experiences and the opportunities, you know, being here speaking with other ostomates, now working alongside brands in fashion, and you know, being able to normalize the inclusion of ostomies and other fashion brands. It's just like it's so thrilling, it's so liberating, it's just like it's just wow. Like it's almost like I have no word. It just feels surreal. It feels like I'm literally living a movie. But I'm so grateful for it. I'm so like humbled by it. And it just feels amazing to be able to literally just be the real me. And that's like the most beautiful thing ever, I feel.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And your face, when you were just talking, your face just lit up. just lit up. Who cares about ring lights or whatever? Your face just lit up, like way lit up when you're talking about it. And that just fills my heart. It fills my heart because too many people hide, right?
Yeah.
Or don't know where to look, or don't know where to go, or don't know what to do, and don't know how to ask. And you have just taught a lot of us a lot of things, those little mini steps, those little mini challenges, the smaller things that you did, keeping it quiet to yourself, but the small things that you did over time. I mean, it took you 15 years to be able to put it out there like this, right?
Yeah.
If there was, we're coming to the end of our time here, but if there was, and I always ask this, one thing that you want to leave our listeners with, what would that one thing be?
I would honestly say never compare yourself to anybody else. This is something that I did for years, which I spoke about earlier in this podcast, comparing myself to my peers, comparing myself to others, like online, other women, what, society deems to be beautiful. And like, because it was literally every single thing I wasn't, it didn't give me any confidence. It, affected my self-esteem. It was all just negative results. The most important thing to do is just compare yourself to a past version of you. If you've made improvement, if you've, strengthened weaknesses, if you've overcome like battles and turned past challenges into triumphs from a past version of you to the present version of you, then that's all that matters. And that's all that you should be focused on. So if, going into this new year, I personally make, my continued goals, my continued manifestations, things that I want to continue working on. I would, make a list of those things that you want to work on for you, and don't track your progress based on what others are doing, especially within, the IBD and the ostomy community. We're all at different phases in our journeys, and you can't, just because I'm able to, post about it now and I'm showing off my bag and I'm wearing two pieces, it's totally okay if you're not there yet. And it's totally normal. The most important thing is that you're working towards being able to get there, and you're kind of building your path, and you're setting your little journeys, even if it's like wear a two-piece in your backyard, walk around your house in a two-piece. I saw this thing that it's like this day, it's called Naked Day, and this other content creator posted about it, and she speaks like heavily about like body image and body love, and she has these days that are called naked days, where she literally walks around her house completely naked, and she makes sure to, pass the mirrors, see herself, love herself, feel comfortable in herself, not like cover herself. And like, I found this so cool. I was like, oh my God, I love this. Like, you're literally just in your own skin, learning to love yourself, learning to feel comfortable in yourself, going through different experiences. So I think it's so important to just literally only compare yourself to a past version of you and never compare to others, because you'll never be somebody else. You'll always be yourself. And if you can be a more powerful version of your past self, then that's just the most important thing. And that to you is progress alone. So
you are a very wise girl for a young age.
Thank you.
Very wise girl for a young age. You just made me start to think of some things too, because it's been a while.
Oh, yay!
It's been a while since I've posted me and my ostomy right out there.
We gotta get her out.
I know. It's just like, okay, it's time again.
Yeah.
I think it's when I look at it, I'm like, okay, I'm 53 years old now. I'm not really running around in a bikini like I used to, but
you could in your house.
but I could in my house. And I can outside if I really, really wanted to. But
exactly. You
yeah.
could. As long as you put your mind to it and you work towards it. It's okay if it takes a long time. These types of journeys, you have to have a lot of patience, perseverance, determination. These are all, aspects that, you're going to have to embody and embrace, and just be patient with yourself. It's okay if you're not where somebody else is. That doesn't matter. You just need to be working along your own path, track your own personal progress, like fitness too. you just never compare yourself to anybody else because
Exactly.
the results will honestly like they'll differ greatly. So
You're right on that, because from someone who used to do fitness competitions, which is what I used to do
I
all the time.
saw those bikini comps. I saw those and I was like, oh my God, I want to do that.
I did it, and I did one 2 years after I had my ostomy. I went out and get back up on stage and
I
did it again.
saw
But
that was
even
unreal.
prior to having my ostomy backstage, you're still comparing. So, I mean, this message can go for a
Mm,
lot of people in a lot of
yeah,
different ways, not just us and our ostomies.
yeah.
But girl, this message has been amazing. I have so enjoyed listening to having you share your story, listening to your story, and then all the tips and things that you shared with everybody on what it took for you is really going to relate to a lot of people. So listeners, go follow Sara. I'm going to put her links in the show notes. So go follow her over on Instagram. Send her some love. Let's build up this community a bit
Well,
better.
send the love back.
Right, exactly. She will definitely be
Yeah,
sending the love back. Um,
yeah.
so yes. So anyways, Sara, thank you so much again for being here with us this week. Truly, it's
Thank
been
you so much for having me, Leanne. It was a pleasure to be here. And I always say my DMs are open for anybody and everyone. I love getting all your messages, literally getting messages from people saying like, I'm gonna try to wear a bikini this summer. And I'm like, oh my God, tag me in the photo. I'm ready to like comment bomb your photo. So I'm there to support everyone and everybody. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. Thank you again, Sara.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. If you enjoyed this podcast, get the behind the scenes at leannehayden.com/ostomy updates. And also, if you found this episode encouraging, please screenshot it and share it on Instagram. And don't forget to tag me and also the person who was on the episode with me. I occasionally will do special gifts for anyone who does do a screenshot and share it on Instagram or in your stories. Also, lastly, please go to Apple or Google, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast to keep up with them every single week. I enjoy you guys. Thank you so much for being here.